what are some hindrances, like, do you believe that might be in the way of young adults, like, fully committing to their faith in high school and in college?
Is this idol of identity? Like, who am I? Who am I? Who's Nick? Who's Jeremy? And uh, are we defined by what we do? Are we defined by the people I'm with? Am I defined by my job? And what happens when I lose that job or that job is no longer available? Life changes when I'm a parent. Is that all I am? Or am I a husband or a wife? So there's that temptation because the world around us is all about what you see and the perfect perception that we put out online in various platforms. You are tempted to become identified with this thing that does not define who you are. And I believe personally that only when we seek our identity in our Creator, His desire and plan for our life, are we then able to fully walk in understanding of who we are, identity,
Yeah.
why we're here, purpose, and how we do it with people that God's put in our life.
What up, winners? You're now watching and listening to another episode of the Tackle Thursday with JK podcast, and I'm your host, JK, and you know I'm all about helping young adults win in life and at life, and I do so by tackling different topics on each episode of the show that young adults face. And today, I got a special guest with me. If you are a Seagull Star graduate, especially a football player, I'm pretty sure your life has been impacted for the better by this young man. I know for me, when I met him when I was probably like 19, 18 years old. I'm 35, and we've been friends ever since. I look at him as a true family member. I call him my Tennessee family. Ladies and gentlemen, y'all help me welcome our special guest, Nick Mobley. How you doing, Nick, man?
Thank you so much, brother. Doing great, JK. Honored to be here with you.
Man, no problem, man. I'm honored to have you. I appreciate you, man. And just talking before we started the show, just expressing, my how I feel about you, how I see you, man, and wanting to do it, publicly on my platform, man. Is just, man, I appreciate you. I appreciate you. I truly look at you as family away from home. When I met you, I think 18, 19 years old, coming in and you doing working with FCA and help leading us, sharing, and and from that point on, we been having a great relationship, building every year, man. And I appreciate you. I appreciate the opportunities you've given me to share the word of God and to use the gift that God has given me. I'm inspired, by you and your wife marriage, man. And you got 21 years, celebrating 21 years of marriage tomorrow, man. So happy anniversary, man. And man, I salute you. Like I say, man, I'm excited to have you and just learn more about you, man, just as we go through this particular episode. But and so with that being said, man, I just, tell the people and myself, where you're from, where you grew up, and a little bit about yourself, man, what you do.
Yes, sir. I live in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. I've lived most of my life here, even though I was born in Southwest Louisiana. Got a little bit of Cajun connection in my bloodline. But my wife and I both grew up here in Middle Tennessee. We met in high school, became high school sweethearts, and I wasn't a fly guy, so I found one girl that would talk to me, and I kind of held on to her with everything I had. And so God has blessed us. As you said, we celebrate 21 years of marriage tomorrow. We have 3 wonderful children. My oldest son's about to start college next fall. My middle daughter starts high school in the fall, and our youngest is in 5th grade. I'm a pastor here at a local church, and my wife is a city school librarian. She loves teaching and captivating children with books and helping them discover the world of imagination through reading.
Man, that's awesome. I never knew you had a little Cajun in you, man. That's why I was interested because sometimes a lot of times I might know where the guest is from. But I say, you know what? I'm not going to ask. I'm gonna find out just like the audience. And man, that's awesome, man. So being from there, I know like you spent a little bit of time, right? You're younger. Do you feel like in the ways that you might cook, you implement some of that Louisiana cooking, or is it kind of
I'm usually a professional at eating more than I am at
yeah,
cooking, but I have an affinity for that flavor. And
yeah.
so, whereas others that I know they maybe don't quite enjoy the spice or the seasoning that I've come to know and love growing up from my mom and other relatives cooking. So, my waistline certainly reflects the type of eating that I came to know and love growing up.
No, definitely, man. And man, I didn't know you and your wife, Ms. Mobley, was high school sweethearts, man. So, and just how was that? Like, how was it when you first met? What was the decision when you got to, senior year and it's like, okay, we're graduating high school because a lot of times, right, people go separate ways or one goes off to college or one, and a lot of things can happen. Right. And so I think that that's a testament, that's a blessing to be together that long and to still be in love and happy and enjoying life, man. So like take us like through that, how that happened and how was the transition from high school to post high school?
I'll try to share the short version and then you can ask follow-ups as you want.
Yeah.
Might be helpful to those who listen. But both my wife and I were saved, came to know the Lord during our high school years through through a mutual friend. My testimony really begins when I was about 13 and 14 years old, and I was a child of a broken home. Divorce just shattered my world, including my family. And I came to know Jesus and find rescue and hope and a future in those early stages of high school that really transformed my world, my life, and gave me hope for the future. And especially those later years in high school when I began to really walk closely with Jesus and understand the call that he placed on my life, that's about the time that God was doing a unique work in a young lady who would become my wife.
Yeah.
And so she, through the same mutual friend, had been just poured into and encouraged. And she was on a trip with a school group where they were allowed the opportunity to go hear Billy Graham in San Antonio and his crusade. And she made a decision there, walked the aisle, and God transformed her life. So when we connected our senior year of high school, it was from a vantage point of two young people seeking to walk with Jesus. And so there was not this early temptation to compromise our convictions or to become totally engulfed in each other to where that relationship becomes your identity. But it was simply an enhancement or something, an added bonus into what we got to enjoy. And, God's grace, just as we began to share life in that very, surface way early on in high school, I began recognizing early on that, oh, hey, this is someone that I don't have to set aside my faith or to compromise certain standards or convictions because I want to learn more about this person or spend more time with this person. This individual shares that same desire. And so, man, we got to grow together. And then I know we'll get into ministry in a minute, but as I began to see my soon-to-be wife find joy and fulfillment from serving Jesus, knowing that that is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, I was like, this is too good to be true.
Yeah.
I expected that I was going to be by myself forever, and I didn't deserve the best, or God certainly didn't have the best for me. But lo and behold, he did. And so our marriage has had its rough spots, and our journeys had tragedy and trials like any others. But throughout our 21 years now of marriage and right, maybe 25 plus knowing each other, we see God's faithfulness through it all.
Man, amen to that. And that was, I think a huge, aspect of just wanting you to be able to come on, man, and bless me and my audience is because I think because I target the young adult audience, and I think what's huge and important in that as we navigate the world. I know I'm on that getting on that north end of the young adult, right? I almost out of there, but is the faith component, right? Our relationship with Jesus, our relationship with God, and I think something that you said that is so important because I seen it in me and Brittany's marriage and courting, that we weren't looking for each other, right? And I think as young adults, it's like, especially like you're starting to get a little older, you get in your 20s, and it's like, man, I gotta find someone. I'm getting older, I gotta get married. And it's like I gotta, and the thing was with Brittany, same thing as you, is we were seeking God. I was seeking God in my own individual walk, trying to get better as a believer, trying to grow in my walk. And Brittany was too. And then through a mutual friend, we met each other. They told, hey, Jeremy goes to a FCA meeting, and Brittany had just transferred, and she came to the FCA meeting, a couple of meetings or whatnot, but we officially met each other. But we ran into each other not because I was looking for her or she was looking for me, but through our relationship. And our mutual friend was the first lady of my church. So as she was on her spiritual journey, being mentored by my first lady, I'm going to church, and she's my first lady at my church while I'm seeking God. On that path, God allowed us to find each other, right? And it's a beautiful thing when that part of your relationship is taken care of, in the sense of, hey, we agree on this. We are of common, what I'm saying, mindedness or like-mindedness. And then now we can grow from there into, like you said, we don't have to exclude Jesus from this conversation, that he's a part of everything that we do, that he guides our actions, that he guides the way that we move and we operate. We're still human. You have temptations, but you're able to have conversations with your significant other and be like, hey, we can't do this, or we can't do that, or these type of things or temptations. And I think, man, that's powerful, man. That's powerful, man. So congratulations to y'all on that. And I just really want young adults to understand, those that might be single and might feel like, man, I'm gonna be single forever, or man, if God don't do this in another year, I'm gonna just go find somebody. Like, no. Seek God, and I promise you that in his perfect will and time, if that's what he has for you, that you will bump into that person that God has for you. And so when you talk about it, right, being a pastor now and for so long, what about your childhood or your life do you feel like prepared you for what you're doing now?
I had a deep love and appreciation for family as a kid. My family was very tight and close knit, which is why when divorce happened, it rocked my world. And so in some ways, that love of family was birthed early on in my life. But then when brokenness hit, my desire to encourage other families, and as I understood God's design for family and for relationships, and I experienced my own personal call to ministry, even at age 14, 15, I was compelled to serve in that arena because I saw the value and the impact it can have, both in the good for those who thrive and pursue those healthy relationships, as well as the scars and the impact that can happen when it doesn't go well. And so early on, that even though I couldn't predict the future, I can look back knowing that even in the unlovely parts of my life, God was orchestrating my own story in a way to which he was preparing me for what I'm doing today.
For sure. And working with kids, man, you and I both, work with kids and young adults specifically. And what type of advice would you give me or someone out there that's working with kids that's dealing with broken family? to where they're devastated, they're heartbroken like you were, but you still seem to have kept a positive outlook on family and marriage. And so many times I remember having a conversation with a scholar, and he said, nah, I'm gonna have kids, but I'm not gonna get married. I was like, you ain't gonna get married? He's like, for what? Like, we probably gonna break up anyways. Like, relationships don't work, right? That was paraphrasing, right? But that was his experience, right? And so but just because we experience something doesn't mean that we have to emulate the negative side of that, right? Yeah. So what type of advice would you give someone like myself who works with kids and might have a conversation with someone that is coming from a broken home and their view on relationships and marriage and a healthy family has been skewed?
There's a lot of shame that comes in these stories. There's whether it's acknowledged or not, people might try to cover it up by different things. And so even as a child of the divorce, I felt shame about what happened, even though I had nothing to do with what took place. It was not my fault. I felt shame. And so then I began to assume, well, this is part of my story now, and I can't rewrite it. That my parents' story is undoubtedly going to continue to be my story. And so I would encourage the person who's gone through that to remember, hey, their story doesn't have to be your story. And it is not your story. Your story is your own. Your path is your own journey. So do not fight that urge or that temptation to feel like this is a rock that I can't climb out from underneath. Sure. And pursue healthy relationships and seek what you can learn from those parts of your story that were so hurtful and difficult. And I would say for those who are perhaps the ones who have done some wounding, if there's some, I would speak this word of grace and truth to parents in those moments, as hard as it may be. Please know that this is not about you. For your kids' sake, it's not about you. I know you're hurt, and I know you got baggage, and there's a war that may be going on. But when you put your child in the middle of two grown adults, there's no win for that child. I don't care how old they are, how mature you think they are, how much they think they show that they can handle. This is about them. And so perhaps maybe the greatest win that you can have as a parent is to love your child with grace during what will be one of the most impactful transitions that they'll experience in all of life, so that your child's story is different than your story.
For sure. How whatever you want in life, you first got to serve it, I believe, right? Or you have to serve somebody that is doing what it is that you want to do. That's part of internships, where you're serving that organization, that company, that ministry, to learn from them first, so then you can go and lead. Because I truly believe the best leaders are the ones that can serve first. And I can attest to your leadership, and now learning more about your backstory, just how well you serve, it's easy to see why you're doing such a great job as a leader, because you have a heart of a servant. And I think the best leaders are servant leaders. Yeah. And so that is awesome, man. Definitely awesome, man. And so being in ministry, what would you say is the most rewarding? You work with young adults, you work with kids, you work with people. What would you say the most rewarding thing for you is? It's just being in ministry.
I've been blessed to serve at this local church I serve at currently for 17 years now. Yeah, man, and not everybody has that type of opportunity, but one of the most rewarding parts for me has been not just preaching every week or facilitating events, but really walking alongside people throughout all seasons of life, to where I knew how God worked in their life as a teenager, and now they're married with kids. Yeah. And doesn't mean their story was perfect or sequential, like it followed a trajectory that stayed like this, but
Yeah.
it was an up and down roller coaster. Or, hey, we walked through some hard parts of life, or they were faithful to pray for me when I didn't have it all together. So just the almost lifelong friendships that God provides as we serve in the context of a church family is something that I don't believe you can truly experience or fully appreciate outside of a church, because we all got baggage, we all got problems, and then but to serve as a pastor in the church, get to see more or interact with others in a way that you don't always see in the community. So that's been one of the most rewarding parts for my wife and I, is that we get to walk alongside people throughout decades of their life.
Man, that's a blessing. Well, I'm a testament to that, right?
Yeah.
Just me, like I say, met you, and I don't even think me and Brittany was dating. I think when we first met, so met you, was single, and then been knowing you now, married, going on 9 years, the third kid on the way, man, trying to catch up to you, and just seeing the evolution, man. And this is a question that's not on here, but it just came to mind. Like, do you like? Are you ever, because I know I'm hard on myself, right? And that's probably not a good thing in a lot of times, right? But do you ever like get hard on yourself or get to the point it's like, man, like, man, I'm a leader, I'm a pastor, man. I can't do that, or how did I mess up that way? Like, do you ever find yourself beating up on yourself, or like how do you give yourself grace like you give others? Like, is that a difficult thing? I know that's a difficult thing for me. So I'm really asking for myself and asking for those that might be listening that might struggle with extending grace to themselves. Like how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I almost quit. I there was a stretch of my life where I was beat down, and it was shame. That voice of shame became so loud. Some of it was my own doing. Some of it, a lot of it was the enemy. A lot of it was the work of the enemy in the lives of people around me. And I took that burden upon myself because, as a child of divorce, oldest son in the family, I was the peacemaker. It was all on me. Like, problems were mine to fix. And if I didn't check that to the Lord or to people who cared about me, I had that false belief that I was a superhero, that I didn't need anybody else. Um, and so you're a harsh critic upon yourself, and we think we're our own Lord and Savior, and you live and bow at that idol, then you will burn out and shut down. So it's sadly only when I hit rock bottom that I was really able to become aware of that toxic way of thinking and living through counseling, where I began to really discover why I would allow myself to think the way I did, and how some of those thoughts were not from the Lord, or were not kind, or were not gracious, and therefore needing correction. So through counseling, through mentors, and times of deep soul searching and time away, I was able to rediscover God's desire for righteousness in my life, while also celebrating the grace that's available to Jesus, because I can't do it on my own. And holding both those things as best we can, knowing that we aren't superheroes. And ironically, once we embrace that and fully understand that, it's only then that we're more capable of effectiveness and greater impact, because it's not up to us. We're free. There's liberty there.
No, for sure, man. And I think I shared this when the opportunity you gave me to speak. And because I used to have the idea of like, and I didn't know it was the enemy, right? Or the wrong thinking. I was like, oh, yeah, like I mess up, I sin, and I feel bad. And I was like, I feel better once I start to feel perfect again. Right. And I'm like, and I
Mm.
for years. And I remember God giving me that revelation. It's like, Jeremy, like, every time you started to feel perfect, that was where the enemy wanted you to be.
Mhm.
Like, that feeling doesn't exist. So when you would feel, filthy or not good enough, or yeah, like you aren't good enough. But by the grace that I extend you, you are able to do what you do, and I bless you not because you're good enough. I bless you because you're my child.
Yeah.
And yes, as a believer, we have to be obedient, and it's things could come with disobedience. But all in all, like that feeling of perfection, that's what the enemy wants you to believe, and he got you sitting in pride. And I
Yeah.
didn't realize that for so long, man. And so, man, appreciate you for sharing that, man. Appreciate you, man. I know that came out of left field, but that's just as I'm listening to you, I'm like, man, let me get some nuggets for myself, man, as well as I continue on my journey, man, and always gleaning from you too, as well, man. And so, talk about as far as like dealing with young adults, man. Young adults and faith. Like, what issues do you believe young adults are facing today? What's the greatest the issue that you see? Top three, if you don't want to limit to one, that you
I
see
think
that they're facing.
loneliness, I believe, is one that is fueled by disconnection. We say we're more connected than ever before. We
Yeah.
say we have more friendships and followers than anyone in before in human history. Yet, why are we so lonely? Why are we so disconnected? And why is it so many of our relationships are so shallow? I believe it's because at the core of our lives, we realize, man, we're lonely. And so then that feeling of loneliness or shame fuels our behaviors that can be toxic and unfulfilling. I think that's what fuels, whether it's substances or addictions or shallow relationships or hookups, because hey, I'm chasing dopamine. I'm chasing this high or this value here that doesn't give me lasting joy, only temporary fulfillment. And that is also what fuels um, our struggle with who we are. Because if I'm not connected, or if I'm not with this person or with this group, then who am I?
Mm. Man, hey, you broke that down right there. Loneliness and how it just like I totally I agree. Like when you as you're talking, I'm thinking about just the scholars that I work with, teach, and how just in general that being lonely, how that can say, well, okay, if I'm lonely and man, I'm not in a relationship. Now you rush to get in a relationship.
Yeah.
Not shallow. You don't take the time. You're not patient. Or like you said, are you trying to fill that void of loneliness with a substance or something like that, man? And so nah, that is true. And I think it's crazy because it does just social media, it really changes our way. Even when I talk to the kids and I'm like, so what y'all do? Like, do y'all get each other phone numbers? They're like, nah, I get the handle, the Instagram handle. I was like, so y'all don't have to call the house and talk to the dad or talk to the mom and say, hey, is so and so here? And like, nah, I'm like, that's part of it. Like that's part of you
Yeah.
growing up and getting access, right, to a person's child is that you got to go through the adult. And but yeah, man, that's a good point, man. Just the loneliness, man. So when you talk about the loneliness and then you couple that as being a young adult, which we know, right, in a lot of cases, on a football team, that it
Mhm.
might not be the most popular thing to be a believer, right? I was just listening to a podcast today where some professional NBA players, ex-players were talking about how they really never seen like, believers in the locker room. Right. And they were just talking about why certain coaches might can't get jobs and how their faith is might be impacting them. Right. And so when you talk about like young adults committing like fully to their faith, like what hey, you hitting on them points, man, because I think I did a podcast episode before titled You Do Because of Who You Are.
Yeah.
Right. And to your point, our identity, especially as men,
Mhm.
um, Right, when we talking to each other, what we say, man, so you meet somebody new, you introduce yourself, and you say, man, what you do for a living? Right? And I remember being in college playing football. Hey, how you doing? My name's Jeremy Kellem. I play, you know what I'm saying? I'm a football player here at. No, like I play football, but that's not who I am. Right. And I think that's why even, athletes, we struggle transitioning from the sport, because since we're 5 years old, as we grew to know who we were, it got tangled with what we did. And so now you no longer do it, and you've been doing it for 15, 16, 17 years. And now you're like, man, I don't know who I am. And so, like you said, man, to the young adults that might be struggling with identity, trying to figure out who you are, or you know who you are, right? In a sense of as a person, but you're trying to figure out, okay, what should I do? Find your identity in Jesus Christ, in God. Seek him. Yeah. Seek him for who he is, and to grow spiritually. Seek him for your identity. And through personal experience, I know that God will start to reveal to you. He will start to highlight. He will speak to you through other people, like speaking. I've been speaking since I was a kid. I remember doing 4 Sundays, like I said, but my 9th grade year, my pastor said, hey, Jeremy, I'm going to let you speak your first, preach your first sermon. I was like, but I broke my ankle. He said, well, what does your mouth have to do with your leg? I was like, good point. Right. But he seen something in me that I didn't see in myself, right? But it wasn't until, that was like all the way in 2005, right? But it wasn't until 2013 where I had a speaking engagement, and a guy came to me and said, I see your passion. And I was like, what? He was like, I see your passion. And so what I'm saying is that when we seek God, that God could speak to us directly through his word. He could speak to our spirit. He could speak to us through other people. And I believe that him speaking through that guy just solidified what I was already feeling, right? And so, and it gives me direction, and it gets to the point that, like you said, I talk about the triple threat, right? Gifts, passion, and our purpose. That God gives all of us gifts. So he gives us things that we're good at. Then he gives us things that we're passionate about doing. But so when we're doing what we're gifted to do, and we take our gift to do what we're passionate about doing in order to fulfill our purpose, then we operate in our triple threat. And so, like with you, you were gifted to serve, you're passionate about people, and you know that part of your purpose on this earth is to serve God's people, to share God's word, and help bring souls to Christ, and help them be better servants of him. You're fulfilling your purpose. And so all of that, you can get those answers through your relationship with Jesus, man. And I remember, and I'm sure this last point, I feel like I'm talking for a long time, but I remember with Jesus being attacked in the Bible, right? The enemy came at his identity. It was like, he said, if you say you are who you say you are, you would do this. But Jesus is like, no, I already know who I am, so I ain't even falling for that. And so it's just like, man, that the enemy really comes after our identity in so many ways. And when we are locked in on who we are in Christ, man. Not saying that attacks still won't come to pull at our identity, but we're able to stay true, man. So I appreciate you, man, sharing that, man. And I think that is awesome with that, man. And so working with young adults and helping them and improve their faith and growing their faith, that's awesome. That's amazing. That's a beautiful thing. But we know as husbands, our first ministry is at home, man. Yeah. Right. And so, like, how do you, like, as a father, as a husband, as a man of God, like, what do you believe, like, your role is and the role of a husband and father in their home in terms of serving God and leading their family?
Yeah, I believe I've got to simplify it in that I ask folks, encourage families, dads, the greatest gift you can give your family is to walk closely with Jesus. In a world where men especially, we might be tempted, constantly beating ourselves up. I don't do this, or I'm not great at that. And simplified. I'm a one-thinger dude. Like, give me one thing. And if you walk closely with Jesus, I trust God enough that he's going to lead you, and he's going to help you shepherd your family the way that God desires for you to shepherd your family. Because there can be nuances about personality and family dynamics that look different from man to man, woman to woman, house to house. But if you walk closely with Jesus, I believe you're going to love your wife you're going to love your kids. And going back to something I said earlier, realize that your marriage, even your family, is not about you. Sometimes we get the big head
Yeah.
men, like, I'll tell you how I run my household. I'm
Yeah.
gonna tell
Yeah.
you how we put this down, right? And get over yourself.
Yeah.
And I've failed at that more oftentimes than I've succeeded. But the moments when I've considered, I use a platform phrase, considered know my audience,
Mhm.
my congregation, my wife and my kids. Not in the sense that I stand and preach at them every day, but that what do they see when they see me? What do they feel when they're around me? How do I care for them? Here's the big one as a kid, as a dad who's got kids starting to think about opposite sex is, and the way that I love my kids, is it giving them a good example of the type of person that they long to and that they're looking for in someone in the opposite sex? The way that I love my daughter, does she see pride and joy and pleasure to get to be around them? Or are they a burden? Are they imperfect? Are they broken? So same for my wife. Rambled a bit there, but just considering, hey, it's not about me. I'm called to shepherd my family, which means I care for, I protect, I serve, I love. Ultimately, I lead them closer to Jesus by the way that I live my life, much more so than just the words that I say.
Man, that's simple as that, man. Like you said, it's just I totally agree. Getting closer to God, and he will start to reveal things and show us and tug on us and guide us and how we're supposed to what he tells us, right? Especially with our wives. Husbands, love your wife like Christ loved the church. And I think that is a constant reminder. Like when I stop and say, okay, I'm in the church, how does God love me? Okay, unconditionally, right? I ask him for a lot of stuff all the time, right? I'm like, and I started to think about how I am, and I'm like, God forgives me. He's long suffering. He's
Yeah.
patient with me. He cares for me, and I'm like, that's what he expects, me to be, right? And I think that's big, man. And I know my kids are much younger, but me and Brittany, we always have conversations. Even like if we're having disagreements and things of that nature, it's like, okay, we got to make sure that we're striving to, and we don't always hit the mark, but we're conscientious of it. It's like, hey, we got to make sure we do this because I want JK to know that this is how you treat a woman, or I want JK to be like, okay, this is how his wife should treat him, and my daughter, I want her to know that,
Mm.
hey, a man should treat you like this, and we want her to know, okay, this is how you should treat your husband. So, man, I think that's big, and that's heavy. That is heavy, man. That do you ever feel like it gets not too heavy, but like it gets really heavy to lead your family in that? It's like a lot of weight is on your shoulder. Like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah. I think it goes back to the question earlier where you feel, hey, do you ever beat yourself up? Do you feel a lot of pressure? Like all the time.
Yeah.
And if I allow myself to spiral, I can get defeated real quick. I can get down. I'm like, man, I've missed the mark. My son just graduated high school. How much time did I waste doing XYZ, or what did I miss?
Yeah.
And that's, there can be some healthy conviction there
Mm-hmm.
to that question. So we don't throw it all out, but there's some stuff that I'm sure the devil would love for me to dwell on it,
Mm-hmm.
to experience discouragement that leads to defeat. But instead, I think of how Jesus sees me and, hey, what would he have me do today?
Yeah.
Let's get out of this realm of like big picture, hey, let's just walk where our feet are. Let's be where our feet are and love the people that God has in our lives right now and love my kids. What does my wife need today? Or how is he working in my kids' lives right now that will lead to the next steps of their journey of faith? And so try not to get bogged down by the big picture always, but instead walk faithfully in the present.
For sure. I like that. Walk faithfully in the present, man. And I want to ask this question before I kind of get to the end. Is one thing I see you and your wife do, I see you all have fun, right? I see you all have balance, and I think that young adults, youth that are in faith, a lot of times they think that, hey, Christian marriage is boring. They don't know how to have fun. That's not true for you all. I know that's not true for me and my wife. So, why do you and your wife choose to have balance and have fun? And how important do you think that is for the young adults out there that may be married or engaged or wanting to be married? Why do you think that's so important to have that balance in sense of, hey, you can have faith and fun?
I think it springs forth from our identity, first of all, that, hey, I don't have to do XYZ activity to make it appear to others that I have fun. Like, I am comfortable in how God's made me and how God's woven my wife and I together. Granted, I was a student pastor for a lot of those years, and those people are just weird by nature.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you're going to have fun. And so
Yeah,
by virtue of who I am, what God's called me to do, and the love and acceptance that I've experienced throughout my years in church life, again, I know not everybody has had that experience. So that's why I count myself so blessed and I'm grateful. I feel free to have fun in the way that has made me. I think there's a lot of other people who love Jesus who are tired of the world acting like they're having fun when we know they're miserable and they're
yeah,
covering up a lot of stuff. We
yeah,
can have fun because, man, we're not perfect, but we acknowledge our messes.
yeah,
We're here because we care about each other. And man, the greatest kind of community is one where there's no pretenses. We're genuine, we're real. And when you drop all that other stuff to the side, that's a good time, no matter what you're doing, where you're at. And so I find joy not only in having fun with my family, but in facilitating fun for other families as a
yeah.
part of our church. We had a few months ago an event that we'd never done before at our church, but I felt strongly about that. We had what we call a Night to Remember event, and it was a throwback 80s prom in
Yeah.
essence, where I had a DJ come in, we had the Ghostbusters come in, we had a retro arcade, an old-fashioned candy shop, dinner, the whole nine, a photo booth, old school,
Yeah.
and it was one of the best nights we've had in years. And so that's the type of stuff that I believe we can have. And you know what? There wasn't no alcohol. There wasn't anybody yelling, cussing each other. It wasn't even the type of music that you might experience out in the world at a club. But every single person there loved their spouse, loved Jesus, and had a night that they'll remember for the rest of their life. I believe
And
that's the joy and the beauty of being in the kingdom.
no, most definitely, man. And even along with that, which I thought that was amazing, man. And I know we would have had fun if we was able to make it to the event, man. And just even seeing you doing your TikToks with your daughter and just having fun bonding with your own kids, and but then also being relatable to the young adults that you serve. Like TikTok is something that's real, that our kids, whether they're in the church or not, TikTok is present, right? But it's how you use that platform.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And so I think that's amazing, man. And I think that allows you to connect with even more young adults,
Yeah.
and things of that nature, man. And so as we come to the end, man, I did a lot of asking questions of you. So I let my guests, I give them an opportunity to ask me any question that they want. It could be about what we're talking about now. It could be about anything, man. So I put my guests on the spot. I like to do this because I have to make you think fast on
Yeah.
a question you got for me, and then I answer it, and then I allow you to close, and then we'll be done, man.
Well, I'll tell you what, this is one that a question you and I've discussed before,
Okay.
and you know, I don't want to juke too much here, but as a white pastor
Mm.
in the South, what is some of the greatest ways that I can be a true friend to those in the African American community, those in other minorities who may feel wounded by people who say they love Jesus, but they don't like the way I look or the way I live.
So you
Any
said how?
practical words that we can that it can help me be a friend and help others be a friend to those who have hurt.
Gotcha. Well, one, I think that I have seen you already do that, right? People that because the question I do, let me get a question. Question is, what can you practically do to engage those that look like me, right? To be able to grow a greater connection and things of that nature, especially in the South, with the history of the South. So one, I think that you have already done something. I think it was about 2020. Was it 2020? You had a topic. I forgot the title of the topic, but it was basically that's when it was a lot of unrest within the nation, a lot of divide, and you brought me on, a black man, on your platform, right? A white pastor, and we had those difficult conversations, right? So I think the first thing is to not ignore, acknowledge that it exists, right? That the past definitely still is present in a lot of areas, and that that it still exists, especially in the South, in the state of Tennessee. So I think you are acknowledging that. I think that you create things like that type of event or on your platform to bring more notice to your audience, right? That may look like you and might not have the access or might not have friends that look like me, but they're able to learn and maybe change their perspective of how they view or how they think of things. And then I think that which I'm it's not you. So I know that from my experience with you, that I truly believe in my heart that you understand the plight of it, from the, not saying you can empathize, like be in my seat, but you can sympathize when I say, hey man, slavery, the different laws in the nation, the racism has impacted the black and brown race significantly, and even in things that's going on today, it still impacts us. Or I think that though this might not have been your experience, if I say that, hey, we're behind the eight ball, that we could get in trouble for the same things, and you probably might not get a sentence, or you might get a way less sentence than me, or I can have more experience than you, and we apply for the same job, you not having experience, and you might get that job, right? Or just what happened today, JJ Redick gets hired as a head coach with the Lakers. You have people like Mark Jackson, who's proven that might not get a shot, and they say that it's a part of his faith, but I also think it's a part of how he looks as well, his skin color. So I think when I'm telling you these things, you're not like, no way, it can't. You're like nah, I might not have experienced it, or maybe I have, but I know what you're saying has some validity to it. I'm just not making it up, right? And so that's what I think. So I think acknowledging it, I think creating platforms, conversations around it, like you have. And then I think asking questions like you did. You didn't have to take this question to time to ask this question, but I think asking questions to learn the hard truth or to learn the perspective. And I think with that being said, I think understanding that all black people are not bad, just like all black people are not good. And the same thing for me to always know, right? All white people are not bad, right? And then all white people may not be good. That's a human issue,
Sure.
right? And so understanding that and not painting everybody with a broad brush, but going off of my experiences a lot of times. But I think it is hard. I'm not, it is hard because you have those microaggressions when you're out in public. That reminds you, and I mean reminds you, I mean reminds me of, okay, we got a lot of work to do, or you feeling weird. Like if I'm in an environment and I don't know the people and I'm the only person that's black, I'm like paranoid a little bit. Even though I didn't grow up in those times and I always been free and I still the trauma, those hurts from the
Yeah.
past still creep up, right? And so but yeah, man, I think like acknowledging, creating platforms and asking those tough questions, which you have done and you continue to do and you just did, man. And so like I say, man, you are a family member, right? A brother with a different color, right? Hey, that's how I look at it, man. And when I say that, I really mean that, you know, and I really mean that. And but and I appreciate you, and I think that's what I think even just in 20, I didn't think no different, but I think in 2020 when you created that platform and invited me on, I was like, man, Nick really get it, right?
Mm.
Nick gets it. And I can't say I always feel that way, um, you know, but I know for you in particular, my experience with you and your family, that you all get it. And so I appreciate that, man.
Appreciate you.
Nah, no problem, man. And so, man, lastly, just wanted you, man, just advice, man. If you could just share some advice with that you would give to a young adult that's trying to figure out their faith walk, and then just share with people where they could find you, or how they could follow you. Tell them about Northside. Tell them about your ministry and things that you got going and what's next for you.
Yeah. One of my favorite passages is Philippians 3, where Paul says, not that I've already obtained all this, I've already been made perfect, but one thing I do, I forget what is behind and I press on towards what is ahead. So my one word of advice to young adults trying to figure out life, maybe you're going through the thickest of things that you've ever been through. Maybe you're living on the top, highest mountain you've ever been on. Endure and press on. Don't allow the highs and lows of life to drive your identity, your lasting joy and fulfillment. Life is full of ups and downs. And through each course, through every mountaintop and every valley, the Lord is our shepherd. So we can walk and we can press on knowing that he's with us. So my word would be to press on. You walking with Jesus, press on. You feel like the lowest of lows, you've made the worst mistakes, you can never go back, press on. Feel like everybody's abandoned you, you got nobody around you, you don't know who your real friends are, your family's forgotten you, press on. He's not left you. He's not done with you. Press on because God is faithful. And so that word has stuck with me. That's my life verse where God has reminded me from the moment my parents divorced to the times that I've experienced my lowest in ministry to where I am today, fairly grounded in understanding who I am, my limitations, my blessings, and what God, my gifting, my passions, my pursuits, my purpose. Press on, be faithful today so that I can press on tomorrow. My family and I, we live in Murfreesboro. I'm a family pastor at Northside Church. I just serve the local church. I'm active in our community, and I just seek to be an encourager to others the same way that many have been faithful to encourage me here, not only in our corner of Murfreesboro, but in whatever way he would allow us to throughout our community and the world beyond. So if I can ever be a help or a blessing to anyone else, that's why we're here. And that's what we're about.
Man, appreciate you, Nick, man. And like I said, like he said, if you in the Murfreesboro area, you attend the MTSU, you need a home church, Northside Baptist Church, man, in Murfreesboro. Definitely go check them out. Doing amazing things with the young adults there, man. Nick, I appreciate you, man. For those that's watching, continue to wake up, striving to win on purpose, be intentional about winning, and have a blessed day. Thank you, Nick. I appreciate you, bro.